a dip in the oil price. And secondly, another implication we've seen generally before I go into the topic is that when you have the rise in oil price, the elites in quotes, or let me say those in government or the oil companies, those enjoying, including ourselves, we tend to enjoy better. When there's also an impact, a negative impact in oil price, there's no commensurate, the impact on the poor is more. So when there's a plus, the poor then seems to enjoy more benefits. However, when you flip the coin, they tend to suffer more. And I'll come to that later. But generally, before I go into my topic, I will look at just 4 key items. I know I have roughly 30 minutes, and I hope to use probably less than that. And then we'll have more room for discussion. If you permit me, I would like to connect the thinking because it's like a logical build-up. When I'm through, then we can have have the question, if that's allowed.
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And also I want to comment because I'm not also a self-business person. I work for a company at the management level. I also manage corporate communication. So whatever I'm saying here is going to be my personal views, my personal understanding, and not a representative of the position of the company I work with. Now with this, we'll be looking at 4 items. Number 1, I will just briefly look at the global oil market through the eyes of Corona and other bad guys, other things happening around simultaneously with coronavirus. And then we'll move down and look at what is the state of Nigerian oil industry, and in particular look at the impact of coronavirus or the drop in price on Nigerian oil industry and the economy. And most importantly, the third item we'll now look at, we'll just narrow down our lenses and look at the impact directly on northern Nigeria. If time will permit us, we'll throw a couple of suggestions on the way forward, looking at what, how, and if possible, who, most importantly. So let's start with the global oil markets through the eyes of Corona. I will start by just giving the reality. So in January, oil price was fluctuating between $60, $63, $65 per barrel. That was like 4 months ago. Yesterday is roughly around $15. And the next question we ask ourselves is why? We know the answer, which is Corona. And then so I'll start with the coronavirus. And the way to understand the impact is simple. You can go online. I would have loved to do like a slide, but the time is short. So what I will do is I'll probably share my sources with you. Then you can Google and then learn more. So if you go online and check the world, let me say top 10 or top 20 crude oil importers, you're going to find China on the top of the ladder. China is actually 22.6%. The next you're going to find is US. Forget the fact that they have so much oil. Trust me, they're still buying very well, except that they're not buying from Nigeria. Then you move down, you look at the third is India. Then you find Japan. And then when you go down the road, you have South Korea, which is 6%. And down to Belgium, which is number 15. This is instructive because number 1, that covers 22.6% imports in the world, which is also happen to be our major oil market or buyer, is the first to introduce coronavirus and the first to lock down. And in fact, lock down Wuhan, which is more or less like the Aba of China. So you can directly just correlate how this can happen. Now you move down the road, you have US, which is number 2. And guess where you find US? US is actually today sitting at number 1 in coronavirus. So when you do the table of coronavirus side by side, a table of oil imports, which is really our market, countries that import oil, you find them sitting side by side. You're going to find Germany at number 7, total oil import for last year. And then you find them sitting today at number 5 in coronavirus global index today. Same thing, you find what they call the United Kingdom number 10, and you find them today at number 6. I don't think we need to spend more time. It's just crystal clear how there's the correlation between the demand and supply, which is one of the basic indices for price. And the major markets is down. They've been locked down. And two, one of the things you look at also in determining the price of oil, which we are suffering from, is competing alternatives. One, we have the issue of shale gas, and then we have renewable. But before then, so you have shale gas and renewable, and it's more like a catch 44. Or is it catch 44, catch 22, sorry. So OPEC will want the price to be up. When the price is high, it makes shale gas and renewable oil energy sources feasible and sustainable. When you flip it and the oil is down, the shale gas companies will go into bankruptcy. The alternative renewable have to slow down because it hits on the margin. And guess what? Also, the OPEC members that want to moderate oil will be impacted. And we happen to be, and most of the OPEC members, when you check them, oil happen to be the major contributor to their GDP and national, earning. So another thing you look at also is the geopolitics of oil. I'm sure we know about the issue of OPEC and the non-OPEC, especially Russia. What I would like to illustrate for you is simple is this. When you look at the oil production in the world, the highest oil, the reserve, you're going to find United States of America. And then when you move down the road, you're going to find Saudi Arabia. And then it will surprise you to find Russia number 3. And our beloved Nigeria is number 13. So when you have the first country, they are top on reserve. First, they have the reserve, they don't produce that much. They produce internally. Not reserve, sorry, reserve and production, sorry, production data 2019. You don't have, so they consume more internally, but then that reduces how much they will need considering the impact of coronavirus. You now have the issue between Saudi Arabia and Russia. It's just like your number 2nd and number 3. So you have 3 strikers in the football team, and one of them is injured, fighting coronavirus, and 2 of your strikers are not on talking terms. So you give them the ball, they throw it away. And exactly that's just a picture of what happened to us when Russia and OPEC, which was essentially driven by Saudi Arabia, couldn't reach an agreement on cuts. Finally, we got that agreement 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, it was too late. And also we have more lockdown, further lockdown across the globe that tend to reduce the, the demand for oil. Other things you have to look at finally is I'll talk about speculation. And I think there's this very beautiful picture circulating the internet, if you've seen it, where they have the bowl of Gary and the barrel of oil on one side. And they ask the question that in your entire life, would you have imagined one day that a tier of Gary or a bowl of Gary would actually sell more than a whole drum of crude oil? Now, last week, there was a lot of news how oil went below $1, went into even to minus. People are actually paying for others. That is driven by the 4th item in the oil price, speculation, what we call derivatives, and what some of them call futures. And as the word implies, you bank into the future, you buy the oil, so you get the oil, some buy the oil, trade it off, and make profit of it without necessarily the need for the actual crude. You have one guy on the one side. And then you have those that necessarily need the crude. They trade off, they clean up the benefits, and at the end of the day, as much as the one they can sell, they take the crude if they have the space for storage. So we now have a situation in the US where virtually most of the refineries, most of the storage fully covered. And then you have those speculating. So a guy just bought crude on WTI, hoping that before the closure, he will make a little bit of extra dollar. And then they arrived, he was staring at full barrel of oil, running into maybe, let's say, one cargo One huge cargo is 1 million barrel, and he has nowhere to take it to. So literally begging someone to take it for free. And if you say, no, you can't, he said, don't worry. You need transport, add transport on the money. So while they were selling at minus almost zero, we were actually a bit comfortable at 25. But then that wasn't the end of the story. That was just last week. Today we are around 15. This summation is just to give you a picture, because Nigeria forms part of the market. One, Nigeria is not a key, although yes, we control, we're part of OPEC, and we currently, what they call the current leader of OPEC happens to be a Nigerian. But in the geopolitics of OPEC and other oil countries, Saudi Arabia and others are top there. Nigeria is number 13. And so essentially, while we try to control price, we are price takers than givers. Sometimes we stock it, sometimes we move it. So now we have oil price at 15, and then we ask ourselves, what is the implication for Nigeria? We hope it will go more than 15 in a couple of days to come. That's why I use the word uncertainty. It might go down less than 15 next week. It could actually rise to 30, who knows? We hope it gets back to 30 or above that. Now let's look at Nigeria. When you look at Nigeria, let's start with the budget. A lot of things in Nigeria is driven by the government. It's simple. Talk to your friends that are in business, or talk to your cousins or brothers that are contractors or businessmen, and then you ask a certain question or certain contribution, or whatever it is, maybe family meetings, and you say, oh, sorry, we are waiting for budget, because budget drives expenditure. So last year, Nigerian budget was actually based on $57 oil. By the way, you do your budget on conservative ground. So we were looking at oil, Nigeria was looking at oil at around $60 to $70 per barrel. And we say, okay, let's make it 57. Hoping we'll even have excess, which we have your excess crude account, where you gather once in a while to share money between the state and the federal government. Unfortunately for us, we sold crude oil at around 65, 63, or thereabouts in January, and now it's going for 15. That is roughly about 73.6% drop in our expected earning. That is scary. Now, you look at it also. This will tie to a whole lot of projects, a whole lot of expectation. Now, currently, the government is doing a budget review, and I understand other states are also doing their budgetary review. But when you look at Nigeria, we'll ask ourselves, can we interpret this oil price for Nigeria? By the way, if I may add, for the $15, I remember last 2 weeks, the GMD NNPC was saying, we even have some crude. Is it GMD, I think, or one of the NNPC guys, I think on the papers, sorry. But actually, we have the crude, nobody to lift the oil. So it's wanted to even have it for at 15 or 20. It's another thing to actually have someone to buy it for you. Now, this is Nigeria. What is the impact? First, there's an impact on revenue. Impact on revenue, there's a direct impact on our budget. Impact on budget will affect across boards, projects. And then when you think of a project, think about the workers on those projects. There will be a direct impact on what they call it, our forex, very key, because that is pervasive. When you have impact on forex, because oil is our key foreign exchange earner in Nigeria. So you will sell one cargo of oil, which is 1 million, if it's a huge cargo, which is 1 million barrels of oil. If you sell it if you have sold it in January, it will give you let's say $60 million. If you are selling it today, you're actually going to get $15 million. So first, you actually have $15 million to contend with, but because you're an import economy, your project depends on income. All our businesses are more or less logistic business. Let's bring it from China, bring it from US, bring it from Europe, and sell it in-house. Very little home-bred development and manufacturing. So one, you need to use more dollars, but you don't have. Two, you use more money, you also don't have. So it's like Left is difficult, and then the right is actually worse. This is where we find ourselves as a country. Move to the next aspect is the question of allocation. The question of allocation. If you look at if you go to, I think we've been doing very well in recent time. For some of our brothers doing PhD, you agree with me, or maybe during your masters. When I was doing my masters in UK, if you always make the mistake of choosing Nigeria as your topic, especially if it's a topic that requires data, I made that mistake somewhere around my petroleum economics. I almost roasted, and then I felt I was trying to be wise, and I changed the topic to shale gas US, and shale gas was just coming up. So I wasn't, at the end of the day, very wise. I suffered, and I survived. But recently we have this Bureau of Statistics, and you get fantastic data on allocation. What I'm going to tell you for free is that allocation will drop considerably. That means it's not just the federal government. The budget I'm telling you, there's benchmark against 57, that's federal government. Then you look at the what they call it, you look at the allocation to states and compare it. I actually couldn't pull the data on time, but I used to have it. When you look at the states' internal generated revenue and against their allocation, especially our northern states, it's a very, very scary picture. So the allocation will drop, and then forget any story about excess crude distribution. When you look at all this, the question is, in the midst of all this drop in oil, let's not forget coronavirus didn't just impact oil, it impacts health, movement, food, life. I just read something around one of the airline dropping around, dropping some of the staff and paying them, just dropping their salary by 80%. That is another very gloom or very dark picture down to the northern Nigeria. If we look at then, so if I tell you Nigeria is this bad, and where we sit as a nation, we are already like the poverty capital of the world. And then here we have coronavirus dealing with us. And sincerely, we dearly pray that something happen. Because if you look at the data and the antecedent from other countries, it seems that we are only getting started. And as the scriptures will say, if this is happening to the green tree, what do you think will happen to the dry ones? So we have coronavirus on one side, we have oil dropping oil on the other side. And then we look at this picture from perspective of northern Nigeria. And the best way I can give you is probably to illustrate it this way. Maybe that would help us to understand the picture better. You have a man, maybe, should I call him, Nigeria start from N. I wanted to say, let me see if there's anybody called Nasiru. I don't want anybody blocking me in one lungu in Kaduna. Okay, so I'll use the word Nasiru. So you have Nasiru, he has one wife and 36 children. They are all married. So technically speaking, they have their homes and they are in quotes, independent. However, they depend on their father because they are undergoing different levels of low payment, unemployment, or underemployment. So they depend on their father to give them subvention every month. And by the way, the wife is Abuja. So out of the 36 children, the distribution is not even. The development is not even. And the way it is actually is that the children that tend to have less receive less. And this Mr. Nasser, actually Marlon Nasser only has one big farm, and then suddenly there was locust. It's 75% of the farm produce affected the subvention. What do you think will happen to the children generally? And then what do you think will particularly happen to those who already have less, receiving less? And that is the picture of northern Nigeria. I don't know if you can see this. It might not be too clear. So this is like the poverty UN poverty index. So if you pick that of the world, we know where Nigeria is sitting. So I don't need to show you. So when you come to Nigeria, I was looking at it. When you look at the first, out of the first 15, you have Zamfara, followed by Yobe, Jigawa, Bauchi, Kebbi, Sokoto, Katsina, Taraba, Gombe, Kano, Borno, Niger, Benue, Adamawa, Kaduna, before you get Ebonyi State. And then we resume again. Plateau, Nasarawa, Plateau. And then when you look at this drop down, it gives you the picture of poverty in the north. And then add coronavirus. Before coronavirus, we have insurgency. We have IDP. My brothers and sisters and friends, the picture is not a good one. Neither for Nigeria, nor or especially for northern Nigeria. The implication is going to be the same. The only one that probably will reduce because our informal sector is very huge. We probably will not experience serious, what they call it, redundancy as per employment. But we have some northern governors that are not being consistent in paying salary. What do you think will happen? So you are going to have employment without payments because most of those working in the north are either in the informal sector or in government, mostly in the formal, and a few ones in the formal private sector. And then impact on also, are just trying to catch up with the South, and we have to be sincere with that, on raising, what do you call it? What do you call it? The entrepreneurs, I'm trying to use the word, in the north, the new upcoming young people trying to set up few business, few what do you call it, tech companies, tech, all this will be, there will be one impact or the other. There is implication when you have lockdown and you have a whole region that is dependent on farming, and then you have security situation, you have health situation, and then you have low income for even because most of them are actually government workers using their money, the salary, to subsidize the farming, to buy fertilizer, and the money will not even be enough to buy fertilizer. And by the way, I will tell you, the fertilizer and co, the chemicals are actually some of them imported. Again, the impact of dollar. So what we are looking at now, next year might even be tougher, but we'll pray for a better future. Now, we look at a couple of items. I've looked at impact of allocation. I've looked at the implication for northern Nigeria. The question is, what do you think we can do or we should do? The first one, let's start from the top again. The problem starts from the top. You have to solve it top bottom because control issue. We don't control everything. In fact, most of the items impacting on us are actually outside our control. Yes, there are areas of life we have to take our destiny into our hands and do something. But let's start with the federal government. Again, not a political thing. It's not about PDP or APC or anything. It's a build-up of leadership thinking. Of today, if you must have read about oil, that's what we call the resource cost. And we have suffered this thing. It's built our taste, want to spend more without producing. The first thing is there will be need for the government to do a review. Not just, you do a critical review of this budget and have a realistic figure tied to the budget. We don't need much. Compare every project in Nigeria. Pick it and compare to the cost of that project in every part of Africa. Any part of Africa. Compare it outside Nigeria. It's scary. The cost is out. We need to look at the cost, realistic cost of our projects, review and take the projects that we need to push some projects forward. We will also need to renegotiate. I I'm in the oil industry. I remember 2015, we had this similar situation, and I was involved. I do more of negotiation, really. I'm more of a negotiator than even a lawyer. And we had to do considerable negotiation across board of contracts because our contracts are expensive. So same thing, the federal government will need to look at rooms, opportunities. Don't kill all the projects, especially the project that will impact on the society. If you cut the project, you will cut the dollar at the upstream. But the trickling of that dollar will go to the poor man, the man that will do the digging, the contractor that will do the supply. So while we need to reduce certain projects, we will necessarily retain some of the projects that are key and then consider the possibility of renegotiating as much as possible. And of course, without breaching our terms of contract. Is to use more of knowledge, tax, and relationship than power. Oh, we are government, we can cancel everything. I think that has pushed us into a whole lot of trouble. Different cases here and there. I think I have 8 minutes.
Yes, we have about 3 more minutes of talking approximately, but we could go a little longer if you have a few more points to make.
Okay, thank you. So now let me come to another thing we need to do. As I said, focus on projects that will impact on the poor. Very important. Another thing, generally, we have to look at we learn from other countries. We need to learn from this mistake. So you have a recession, we tend to learn, and as soon as oil is back, we go immediately back to what we've been doing before. Instantly. So we need to learn from other countries that successfully diversify their economy. And you can't diversify in one day. We can't. That's the truth. We have to learn from, especially the what they call it, the Arab, Dubai and co. They have done an exceptional job. Look at Saudi Arabia, done an exceptional job. We have to learn from others. Another thing we need to do is Nigeria must make the oil industry, because forget about all the things about renewable. I am also into renewable learning and everything, but just know one thing. Oil will still be with us a couple of years, except there's a very disruptive technology. So oil will drop, gas will rise, it will fill in the space, it will drop over time. However, we need to, there will be money competing between oil and other alternative energy. And then also within oil, it will be competing between countries against other countries. Currently, I don't think we compete favorably against other countries, even in Africa. That's my thing. We can do better. We've been trying to put in PIB since 2008. And of course, the committee was way before 2008. Until date, we don't have PIB. I understand the current government is strongly pushing. I think the promise was this year, and Corona happened to us. We've had a serious crude bidding. Unfortunately, this may not be the best time to do a major bid, but I think they're also understanding about trying to do a bid for marginal field. Why? When you look at our reserve, your reserve determines your future. Our reserve is no good. Our production is fine. We're 13 in the world and top of Africa. But our reserve is not good. You need the big money to come in, and you don't spend your money. You need the oil companies to come in, take in this license, spend, do their research, seismic, and all their discoveries, and expand our reserve. We need to make the industry far, far more lucrative. And this is the trouble. We want to balance, Nigeria would like to balance current need against future sustainability. I will give an example. Last year, there was an amendment to the Deep Offshore Act. Truly, Nigeria gave a fantastic regime to oil companies to open our deep offshore. And that happened in 1993, build up, and then their discovery, and then we have fantastic oil field coming in. Mm-hmm. Nigeria as a country, let's see if we can get more money from this major, what they call it, development and the increase in oil price. Right. There was a change or an amendment to the Deep Offshore Act, thinking we're looking at a $70 oil. Now we are looking at a $15 oil. Already investment will almost go to low, and within the lowest investment, you'll be looking at the countries you get a good return. And Nigeria will need to rethink
Right.
Northern Nigeria. I'll wrap up here. You told me I have a little bit, so I relax a bit.
Okay.
So how many minutes do I have?
We'll give you, how long do you need? Maybe 6 minutes?
I asked for 4.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. So that I'll do 45, stop at 45. So we learn from all this. Another thing we need to be careful and scared of is, just if you have a spare moment, check the DMO website and see our debt profile. Our debt profile is scary. And people only look at the debt profile of the federal government. There's a lot of states that are burdened with debt profile. And guess what is the source of debt repayment? Allocation. IGR is very low. We need to look at that carefully. This is not the time to jump into more debt to cover the impact, because at this point we will not be negotiating at good leverage. So we'll give so much of the future to survive the present. So as much as possible, we have to do debt, but as much as practically possible, we'll have to, as a country, reduce debt. And also as states, because state governments, if some of them just get extra debt, use the money, do one or two things, get some few projects, put it to their name and move on, and then the next regime or the next governor picks the bill. We have to think that. Northern Nigeria, with that I'll round up. Some of the advice I give generally will apply to general Nigeria. Sorry, before I missed one point, diversify. I know if I've not mentioned diversification, I think most of you will actually think, we're wondering, okay, we need to diversify. One thing, that is one of the most abused words. Every guy will come, the problem of Nigeria. Oh, we need to diversify, we need to move that. You can't diversify first, you need to build orientation, a different thinking. And that's the purpose of all this thing, where all this talk is a different thinking. Leadership starts with thinking. And then secondly, education, and then infrastructure. We have to go to infrastructure, build it as if the world is coming to an end. As if we've never done it before. We need to put those in place. It's with infrastructure before you can diversify. Other business, oil, you just give the license. The guy uses his money to develop. Other business, you need the light. You need other infrastructure in place for other business to work, unlike oil and gas. What they give to the oil guy, you just give him some paper. Even for that paper, they give you 10 million as signature bonus, 1 million, 3 million. And they go in to spend their money. If you want to diversify, you must have a functional infrastructure in place. Northern Nigeria, we need education. We know that for sure. We one day need to have probably a talk on this forum about Almajiri. It's going to be a different topic, but we need to look ourselves in the eye and tell ourselves the blind truth is not going to be sustainable. We all know that, so let's keep it. And one day, I think I'm not even qualified to discuss about it. I am a Northerner. I know a bit about it. I schooled in ABU's area. And sincerely, we need to do something.
Absolutely. And this is a huge topic. And
it's a huge, I will be waiting for that topic.
Absolutely.
I'm serious.
We need to.
I will be waiting. Okay. We need to think about. And then insecurity. We have to handle desertification. Somebody mentioned something very key last time, that the northern governors need to be working together. I think it is our Oga Alhaji Murtala Aliyu, right? I think the first talk that he observed the northern governors don't tend to work. Everybody wants to work in silos. What will stop us from having a green belt across northern Nigeria, especially from Sokoto across to Borno? If we do not arrest desertification, we cannot arrest insecurity.
Right.
Let me tell you, the funny thing is this: wealth comes first from the environment, then the brain. How you think about the environment, you get well with it, and then the people, because the people are the workers. They work the environment, and then they are the markets. We have the workers. My brothers and sisters, we have the wealth in the north. One day we'll have a complete different topic on how to create wealth in the north. Again, that's another topic.
Perfect. And on that topic, then we'll open the floor.
Because I was thinking something. Sorry, forgive me. I was reading a bit. I'm a Christian. I read a lot of history. Also, I read a whole lot about Islam. Sometimes there's something similar to Islam and Christianity. People don't understand. It's just an issue of simplicity. Forget about how we want to model up the whole thing and think about wealth, but really that's simplicity.
Right.
So around some period, Christianity emphasized poverty to the extent that poverty was was piety. And then during the Industrial Revolution, you must have read about the Protestant work ethic. They started making it think like, if you work hard and produce resolve, it's righteousness. And ask the Industrial Revolution guys, they'll tell you it was unbelievable change. It's the same thing Indian decides to do. Indian is extremely laid back. They decide to work out the thinking and the orientation. We've got the population, which is labor and market, and we've got the thinkers, but I don't think our environment is good.
Perfect.
And I don't think our structure is good. We need to formalize business with a big, we have some country neighbors that are landlocked. We have Niger, we have Chad, and others in between. You know, we have a strong business relationship even before the coming of Europeans. We need to think about that.
Silas.
Finally, who will do the job? You and I, everyone here. And they used to say, who will build the cats? When we started talking about diversifying and solving Nigeria problem, we used to talk about who will build the cat. Down the road, it became who will build the lion. And I can assure you what we are looking at today is who will build the dragon. Thank you very much for your time.
Wow, very impactful. Thank you very much for that talk. And very, very powerful words there. So we have a few questions lined up for you. But first, before going and delving in, we have Murtala, Malam Murtala Aliyu on board. I don't know if you have any questions you want to make before we delve into, or comments you want to make before we delve into these questions. I
don't mind. Can I go ahead?
Yes, you may.
Thank you very much. Actually, I saw Isaac asking the question of cost of production, which is hanging between $17 and $22 per barrel in Nigeria as against countries like Saudi Arabia, who produce at something like $4, and we are selling to the same market, and we're supposed to encourage investors to come. And when Silas was talking about earning $15, I was thinking that $15 is what's going to be shared between us and the oil companies, whether if it's under a joint venture or agreement or production sharing or whatever it is. I don't know how it is, but whatever it is, I think whatever we get from that $15 is only a portion of that that will come to us, apart from the other taxes that we follow. So I think that him being in the industry, will be able to explain to us how the production costs, if not lowered, will help our situation. But the aspect he raised about cost of projects in Nigeria, which happens to be my field, I think for that to be solved, we need to convince government to be using the local expertise. For as long as we are bringing foreign expertise, or rather foreign management, who will now employ the local experts here, and at the same time cut all the money out of the country, we will continue to have very heavy cost on projects. We have to develop that. We have to develop local tools to be able to manage small projects within the country. Also, I want us to feel a bit comfortable, because certainly oil will go up. I don't know if you have come across David Hoyle's book, Empires in Collision, where he made a comparison between renewable energy and the carbon-based energy. And David Hoyle was an energy minister or secretary during the Thatcher's government. A very comprehensive book. And I think that oil will continue to be of relevance, because as long as the price will be at a certain level, it will encourage investment, or to discourage investment in the shale gas and other competition within either the same segment of the carbon-based or the renewable energy. The renewable energy is still not very cheap. So maybe Silas will also elaborate a little bit on that. Those of you who may be interested in David Fall's book, this is it. It's called Empires in Production. It's a very interesting book, given the comparison in the energy sector between the renewable and the black energy. So just this comment, maybe in the course of discussion, maybe I will have one or two things to say. But in the case of Northern Nigeria, maybe when I come to the second point on how it will affect us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Malam Murtala. Silas, any comments?
Okay. Thank you very much, Malam Murtala. I appreciate it. So I understand your comments from what I call it 3. I'll just speak to them quickly. First is the $15 or that. Okay, so $15. But for our own type of crude, we get some markup. So essentially, if you are selling Nigeria, you might get it at, if it's condensate, 18, 20. And so I just cut it to the chase, 15. But bottom line is we are looking at 15 to 20. In that 15 to 20, which again, I thank you for your question. I missed some point during my explanation. When we talk about OPEC cuts, which we are reducing, it means there's a cut in production. That production is inclusive of what the oil companies will take and the tax, the profits, and the profit and the cost. Now, coming to, so that 15 oil, what they share is not the split of the dollar amounts per barrel. So what we do, it depends on the kind of contract. Let me start with the PSC. So if you have a PSC arrangement, once you produce, the oil companies spend their money to develop. So they will do what called cost recovery. So they will take cost oil. Once they take the cost oil, the government will take the tax oil. After the tax oil, you now have the profits oil, which you split according to the contract. 30, 40, 36, 70, 46, it depends on, and it's actually graded on the level of production. So when Nigeria is selling, you accumulate your what they call it entitlement, what we call oil entitlement, until you get a full cargo. So if Nigeria sells a cargo, let's say NNPC will take 100% of that amount. But as far as production is concerned, that particular cargo represents a fraction of the total production. So the split is not in the dollar, but in the production at wellheads. Another very important question you raised, the question of cost of production, which is key. And you know, most of our production now is moving offshore and it's more expensive. Saudi Arabia is like it's an oil heaven. Ours is very much up there. So what we do as oil companies, sometimes we try to renegotiate, and that's the kind of experience I was trying to bring to bear for Nigeria as a nation. Sometimes we renegotiate. However, some contracts are long term. You just try to minimize the impact, but you can't cut it completely. And as it stands today, you'll be producing at a loss. But one beautiful thing, which I will tie to your last comment, is that, and I mentioned it, that oil will still be relevant. Forget about renewable is important, but oil would be relevant, but it will be on a very slow sliding curve. And when you have the curve reducing, it means you need to fight more to get a share of the pie. Nigeria needs to position itself ahead. That's why I say, while we solve Corona today, we need to think ahead. I even read just an article today talking about the oil may actually come up faster than we think. Again, speculation. And then local expertise. Thank you very much for that comment. I am seated here talking to you because of ETDF. I was sponsored to UK to do my master's. I didn't know anybody. So probably if you believe, maybe that's why also I believe in Nigeria. I didn't know anyone. I didn't, you know, you need to know someone to bribe someone. So I didn't even know someone to bribe. And if I even know someone to bribe, I didn't have the money to bribe anyway. But that opened the door to work with an Italian company, Saipem, and where I work today. And when I moved in, it's a flip side too. We need to also develop ourselves as Nigeria to give the best. I told my boss, If after 1 year, the only reason you need me here is because of local content, please sack me. And he was surprised. Then one day after 3 months, he looked at me and said, Silas, we can't easily find, it was offshore, just so they, from French or the Italian company. He said, we don't easily find people like you even in Paris. So we have the responsibility ourselves, and the government need to do more. But I agree with you 100%. We need to go for local experts. Thank you very much. I don't know if I have covered your question, and thanks also for the comments.
Thank you. It was really good. I'm very curious to find out your point.
I have a comment to make.
We'll get your comments later on how we kind of position ourselves ahead for the future. So looking at the list of questions then, I'll start with Shamsuddin Amama. He has a question and he's raised his hand. So Usman, if you could unmute him.
Hello.
Hello, Mana Junka.
Yeah, I'm not Shamsuddin.
Sorry.
I'm not Shamsuddin.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a comment to make.
All right, make your comment. Thank you. So.
Thank you.
So introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And what's your question?
I am Engineer Abubakar Umar. I'm the Managing Director of Sir Ahmadu Bello Memorial Foundation. I can see Murtala Aliyu, who is the newly inaugurated Secretary General of Arewa Cooperative Forum, and a host of other participants whose names I may not know, but I'm delighted to be here. And I'm happy with the contributions made by the speaker. As far as I am concerned, I think the North has 4 or 5, comparative advantages over any other section of the country. Number one, we have very vast arable land. Sorry, I'm going to restrict my comment to North only. We have very vast, arable land, of which more than 70% is still untapped, unused. 2, we have inland waterways, waters, rivers, tributaries, so on, with the resources that come with them, which are also untapped. We also have mineral resources that are in every state of the North. Those resources also untapped, virtually, untapped. In addition, the forest resources that we have in the North here are just there untapped. And finally, our livestock. The livestock that we have are there, So these are the main advantages that we have. But above all, the human resources that we have, the people, population, which is our major strength in the North. And of course, about 60% of that population comprises youth between 18 to 30, 35 years. Now, this is where the problem is. There is an advantage, but at the same time, a problem, because we have not put this able-bodied energetic use to economic use. And this is where I think the North may be failing. The percentage of youth that we have, as I said earlier, need to be used to harness the resources that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
Who does that? Who instigates that? Who leads in this regard, in this respect, is the issue that we need to address.
Yeah.
More often than not, we blame our governors, the government, and all that. But I think the issue has gone far beyond these governors. They may have resources. If a governor or governors of the North intend to lead in this aspect, it will be very good. It will be landmark. But for now, I think the Northern intelligentsia need to begin to think, outside governors, outside governance, and so on and so forth. This kind of, conferencing that we are doing
Mm-hmm.
is a step that will lead to this kind of thinking outside the box. Unless we think towards making sure these resources that we have, the 4 or 5 that I mentioned, are put to use outside oil. We should completely forget about oil. Unless we do that, then we will continue to lag behind, as other sections of the country keep saying that the North is, lagging behind.
Right.
I hope something will come out of this kind of discourse.
Thank you very much for your
that will be
comments.
fruitful. Thank you very much.
Yes, the power is within the people, and about using whatever education you have to empower who you can when you have the opportunity. That's a very good point. Thank you. So next we'll move to Shamsuddin. I think he said his mic is back on with us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I commend the presenter and I thank the organizers. Mine is just a comment. Mr. Silas have been able to hold the mirror for us to see. The reality is that the northern governors and people from northern Nigeria must put their mind and realize the situation that faces us. What we have is that we must reduce the cost of governance. It is a reality. If you look at the federal allocation that comes to us, most of the governors in the north heavily depend on the federal allocation to come. We really have to think out of the box, as it has been identified. The issue of buying jeeps, the issue of building more government houses, we really need to stop doing all that, because technically we are the poorest part of the country. And our people must also brace up and realize that we must begin to pay more taxes. You can't imagine someone in Sabangari market, in Singa market, in Kano, selling things on the roadside. We must be ready to pay. The same local tradesman who goes to these places where he pays taxes. The truck that leaves the north, once it crosses over Kogi State, if the driver wants to park the car, he pays tax. So we have to ensure that, we brace up, pay the taxes, and hold our government to account. And we really need leaders with ideas who will be able to navigate us out of the gloomy situation. Because the reality facing us is that we really need to reduce the overdependence on federal allocation, and we must reduce the cost of governance. Thank you very much.
Okay, so next we will move to Muhammed Falalu, and please do remember we are tied to time limits, so we'll try to make this session as close to time as possible. So please, 2 minutes when you do have the chance. Thank you. Muhammad, the floor is yours.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. All right. Thank you very much for the presentation. Honestly, this is very insightful. I'm a production chemist, precisely petroleum, and we understand that Nigeria, honestly, is in big serious crisis, looking at the present predicament. Okay, now let us just keep this aside. Let us look at in an ideal situation. I think right from the beginning, Nigeria, we made a huge mistake by putting our hope in petroleum. Although we understand it contributes to about 75% into our budgets, but honestly speaking, that is not sustainable. We need to find ways to diversify our economy. We understand I am a production chemist, and I know there is poor investment in research and development, particularly looking at the state-of-the-art technology in terms of production of crude oil. Nigeria is still utilizing water flooding. Just look at China, they are using foam flooding. They have gone into enhanced oil recovery and so on. So issues related to accountability and corruption, it is eating deep into this situation. So if we would not think of diversifying our economy to put our hope into agriculture, I think particularly the northern part of Nigeria, I think this is the only way forward. Agriculture, we know, is sustainable, and it has been our tradition for long. We know how to do it, only to bring technology into it. So I think for me, this is the only way forward. Otherwise, things like this will still persist. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much for that. Next, we'll move to Dr. Kaisen Muhammad. The floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me,
Hello.
please?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you very much. We thank Mr. Silas, Barrister Silas, for his presentation. It is a pleasure being on this floor. I'm Dr. Kaisan Muhammad Usman. I teach mechanical engineering in Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, here in Nigeria. My understanding on the petroleum issue and the pricing is slightly different from the presenters, because he's saying that we should forget renewable, that oil will still hold. Perhaps I may say Silas is still campaigning for his industry, but let me tell you, to be frank, we cannot do away with renewables. Over decades, fossil fuels and other carbonizing energy sources have been used to generate power for sustainable industrial developments, for transportation, lighting, powering of heating and cooling devices, and for prime moving in machining and production engineering. But you should remember that the effect of the petroleum product to the environment, especially in climate change, which is primarily due to greenhouse gases liberation during the combustion of the fossil fuels, cannot be over-accentuated. However, research has convened that there are so many alternatives to petroleum, and which we are yet to harness to its totality in the country. In Nigeria, we have so many government MDAs in charge of other diversification in energy sector. For instance, the Energy Commission of Nigeria, the Atomic Energy Commission, Nigerian Nuclear Regulatory Authority, and the rest. But all they do in most cases, with due respect, is duplication of efforts. We need to stand up to the reality. The issue of desert encroachment, desertification, or whatever you call it, is real, and the global warming is real. So what I want to say in summary is the Northern Nigeria has to look post-COVID period towards diversification of our economy in terms of energy generation. As the other speakers spoke about, so many other resources within the northern region. For instance, issues of solid minerals in most of the states of the northern Nigeria that have not been harnessed. We have to look into it. We have to look into the agricultural value chain addition, not just to cultivate the crops, but we have to make them into final products. We have to encourage our micro, small, and medium scale industries. You have to, for instance, some of us that have money stock in our bank accounts, we have to partner with the young, promising Nigerians that have industrialization in mind, so that at least wherever they are, we have to see that people get up from this, poverty. The issue of Almajiri, as somebody also brought in, like the Silas, is one of our setbacks, and I will be looking forward to see the day the topic will be discussed extensively.
Definitely.
I do have a colleague also that is into that NGO, which I would like to invite maybe during the next lecture that has to do with that topic. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you. What I wanted to also just highlight is we keep coming back to the topic of agriculture in Nigeria and how it's definitely an untapped field that we need to focus more on. And we definitely keep coming back to the topic of partnership, which seems to be a reoccurring topic here. So that's something that we need to come back to at some point. So it seems like we have 5 minutes to the end of the session. So we're coming close to the end. If you want networking opportunities, etc., drop your email in the chat box and we will try to pull together an email list and keep everyone in touch with each other. Before we leave, we know with our tight timing, I'd like to go back to Silas if he has any comments to add to all the questions that have been mentioned. And we'll try to see then towards the end if we have more time for a few more questions. Thank you. Silas?
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for your comments. I've learned a lot. Within this short period, there will not enough opportunity to explore some of the concepts and some of the comments. So the comments received I'd really help to expand the topic. I just want to make one or two comments. I mean, let me start. You asked question about positioning for the future. Maybe I'll keep that and close with that, if you permit. So the next thing is comparative advantage of the North. I think that was where, towards the conclusion of my discussion, I brought the issue of the Protestant work ethic, that we have a wealth in the North as much as we have a problem. And I absolutely agree with the commentator about looking, for the purpose of this topic, we're looking at facing the future and how bad things are, and sincerely they are very bad. But should they be bad? No. Should we allow them to remain? Not at all. So if you want, again, you see, I'll be supplying topics. In case you want to be paying me for topics, trust me, I'll be very incentivized. We can have a topic of the wealth of the North. The wealth of the North. And I think that was very important for us, so that we look at the North, not just things affecting us. Trust me, we have tremendous wealth in the North. And I remember I closed the question of environment, and wealth is environment, brain simply means leadership, brain, innovation, and then people. We have the people. On the area of the brain, I think we are here and here at the same time. I think one side of the brain is drawing this side, and I think we are all fighting to draw the side of the brain to the right direction, and I hope we win. So I absolutely agree with the speaker regarding looking at opportunities in the North, although that was not the focus of this topic, but we can explore that in the future. Shamsu, reducing the cost of governance and dependency on federal government, that is gospel. Nothing more to add. It's clear and crystal. The question is the how. I will come to that. Finally, before I just close on the issue of positioning, my friend, Dr. Kaiser, thank you for your comments. Again, when I say forget renewable, I think it's actually a wrong use of words. So I don't think I communicate my thinking. We're talking about oil. We're talking about fear. It's like having a topic on doomsday. And we're saying one of the things is competing sources. And as far as oil, the doomsday of oil, I've read a lot about the end of oil is concerned. We are not looking at the end of oil. Oil will drop down. We need all the renewables we can. In fact, when we discuss the wealth of the North, we have all the sun in the world. You get me? So we have the wind. We have a lot of things to explore. So I am 101% with you on renewable. However, as far as oil is concerned, forget it. That's what I mean. When I mean forget it, I said renewable will not put an end to oil today. Oil price will pick up. It will take time for renewable to take its own share, and it will keep increasing over time. But we need renewable, and I agree with you on that. Finally, positioning. I think I make mention of a few things during my talk, so I'll just recap. One of the things we need is some level of certainty of policy and laws. I gave an example of PIB. Oil is a massive investment. I mean, just give some people that got license, like, okay, one of the, let me say OML 118, where you have Bonga. The biggest part of the field is actually yet to be developed. They gave them license 1993. They developed Bonga Southway, which I worked on. And now they want to do the major Bonga, FPS and everything. And there's a whole, some level of uncertainty. And then you have the price issue. And they start asking yourself, what can we, you know, so this kind of, because you're putting a huge amount of money, it's long-term in nature. So certainty is key. So we need to create some level of certainty. Also, we need to make the industry attractive for IOCs as much as we want it to be attractive for indigenous. So we need to balance building local content, having local content indigenous companies, and having, because the money is huge, very, very, one major field development, you are looking at 10 to $20 billion expenditure. So we need, and in the past few years, besides the Chinese and the Indians, check critically, you will not see 2005, 2007, Bidran and Co. You will not find the Shell of this world. You will not find the Total of this world. You will find, and then most importantly, the heavy lifters in new discovery are the independents, the Tulos of this world. Those are the guys that opened up Ghana. and other countries, Occidental and all that. Check them. They are not even a single international independent in Nigeria. And those are the guys doing the new discovery. And unless we have new discovery and reserve expansion, we don't have a good future. So those are the kind of things we need to reposition. And of course, diversification.
Thank you very much for your time, Silas. This is a very good and insightful talk. I'm sure we have a lot of questions and people still interested in asking. So I've asked them to drop all the comments in the comments box, and I will get back to you with any further questions if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we can open